You guys are still chilling and halilukisi ditaba tsa lona. O tla le thola le se ready. I mean, here's Munir giving us Bible verses here. Timothy 5 verses 23. Yes, you're right, but there's no gin there, Munir, just by the way. Joining us in studio is Dr. Asad El Malik. He's an author, but he's also from America, and he's been in South Africa for 2 years together with his wife. And going to, of course, share with us the reasoning for this. Good morning, Dr. Malik.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, and you?
I'm well. I'm well.
Why South Africa?
Oh, for many, many reasons. I think part of the reasons why I wrote the book was to answer that question very specifically and succinctly. So often when I'm here in SA and people hear the accent, they're like, you moved to this country. Why did you move? So I wanted to kind of the book chronicles from about 2005, my life from about 2005 to present day. And some of the circumstances that led up to my decision to move my family and myself to South Africa. One of them being the kind of hostility that African Americans face in the United States.
Okay, so that's one of the reasons,
Yeah.
right? But there was also the situation for you where you lost your home in Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah, 20 years ago next year will be the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina that came through New Orleans and decimated, literally uh, taking everyone's house, but also the sense of home, right? The only place we had ever known to call home was at that point destroyed. We were unable to return for months, some of us years. So that kind of started my. In the book, I describe home as a dancer, a body forever in motion. Uh, that moment started this kind of fluctuation between this idea of home, between a physical place and a kind of emotional attachment.
Mm-hmm. You know, you've given us one reason why you decided to move your family together with yourself, so you guys decided to move here. But what is it about South Africa where you feel at home now?
Oh man! First of all, it's the welcoming of the South African people. I think South Africa's greatest resource is its people. They're
Mm-hmm.
warm and they're welcoming. Um, but South Africa is also a beautiful place. Like the landscape is beautiful. Cape Town is probably the most picturesque place on earth. But really, there is a connection between Black South Africans and African Americans that is just undeniable. It dates back to the 1890s, and then the history of apartheid, the history of Jim Crow and segregation in the United States makes it very easy for Black South Africans and African Americans to relate and have conversation. So in the book, I describe it as a distant cousin relationship, right? It's like we know each other well, even though we haven't really met
Mm-hmm.
for a long extended period of time. Um, so it is that, and it is the progress that I've seen South Africa make in the last 30 years. To go from a racial apartheid society to now a society where you have born frees who are really expressing themselves and taking up space in the landscape. It's absolutely phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. You know, talk to us then about the political landscape, right, of America right now, and how it would then impact the lives of ordinary black Americans who are still in America, especially with Donald Trump having won the elections.
Mm. It's 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 going to be a lot of slow singing and flower bringing out.
Sure.
It's going to be some rough years for the next 4 years. The day after the election, thousands of Black Americans received a text message. I don't know if you guys heard about this. That said, it had people's names and it said, "Meet at your nearest plantation for, slavery or something like that." Uh, Sincerely, a Donald Trump supporter. So
Mm.
this is the type of viciousness we'll be facing for the next 4 years. Um, so economically, uh, it won't work out too well for us under the Donald Trump administration. But either Democrats or Republicans, we're always in a difficult economic situation. But it is this type of emboldened hostility from sectors of the white community that we're now going to have to face. That are going to be the biggest hurdles that we're going to have to deal with for the next 4 years.
But it's interesting because from what we understand, um, some black Americans could have actually voted for
Mm-hmm.
Donald Trump when we see what he's actually gotten and how much
Mm-hmm.
votes he actually received. Uh, that is quite puzzling, isn't it?
Well, I think 78% of black men supported Donald Trump. 90 plus percent of black women supported. I'm not sorry. Rephrase that. 78% of black men supported Kamala Harris, and then 90 plus percent of black women supported Kamala Harris. So there is still the overwhelming majority, the vast majority of black people supported Kamala Harris this year. You've always had a segment of the black population that leaned more conservative, more right. They were more vocal this year, and I also think we just have to call out the misogyny. The reality is America was not ready for a female president, whether she was Hillary Clinton, a white woman, or Kamala Harris, a black woman.
I was actually about to ask, will they ever then be ready? Because we've seen Hillary Clinton also, vying for the president's seat. Will it ever be ready for that woman president?
I'm sure in the future, um, I just think there are vestiges of very old and antiquated ideas that still exist in the United States, and those people still have voting power.
Okay. Let's then unpack your book a bit more. What is your hope for your book? When someone reads your book, what would you like for them to get out of it?
I would like them to know the story of maybe not the typical African American male, because the every Black American didn't experience Hurricane Katrina, but in many ways they did. I don't know if you guys remember that famous time when Kanye West said George Bush doesn't care about Black people. That was during the Hurricane Katrina recovery. So, and although most Black Americans are not from New Orleans, when they witnessed that decimation, it impacted everyone. So I wanted people to understand, like, through my memoir, my life, as well as other historical events, why Black Americans would choose to relocate out of the United States. To most people outside of the U.S., it seems weird. Oh, this is the land of milk and honey, the land of opportunity, the American dream, and that's propaganda in many ways, because Black Americans have never really known the American dream. We have known a fight and a resistance towards racism and white supremacy, and the kind of American imperialism that has dictated our existence there since, you know, 1619.
It's interesting how you put it, right? And I think it's very profound where you say um, the American dream is not for the black people in America.
No, if we've obtained the American dream, it's not been because it was given to us. It's because everything has to be a fight, right? If you look at the wealth disparities between black communities and white communities, it'll blow your mind. And I think oftentimes when I speak to people who are not from the U.S., visit other parts of the continent, and oftentimes their perception of the United States is based on television, and that makes sense because our perception of the African continent is based on television, and just as distorted as that image of Africa that we see. Is equally distorted an image of the United States of America. There's large pockets of poor people, mainly black and brown poor people, who are struggling. And then there's our white brothers and sisters who are also in very tough economic times. There are people who are working 40 hours a week, teachers, and other people who are homeless, living in their cars. And that's not the part of America that is projected to the rest of the world via Hollywood. Um, so yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to I forgot the question.
It's okay. I think you really answered it, and I then wonder, the way that you speak about America and how you say that what people see is obviously via what we see on TV
Mhm.
and so forth about various places. Have you told your fellow Americans back home that we, as South Africans in Africa, we don't have lions walking
Yeah,
around?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but I'm and see, and that's the point.
Yeah.
There are millions of Americans who, if they hear someone say I'm going to Africa, that's exactly what they would think. They wouldn't think Johannesburg.
Yeah.
And conversely, there are millions of our brothers on the continent who think America and they think New York and they think LA, but they don't think Indiana, they don't think Iowa, they don't think the Kentucky people, the Appalachian people, and all of these are poor places, and they're not glamorous or elaborate. There are places around Joburg that shame many parts of America,
Mm-hmm.
right? But see, it's that kind of propaganda that has taken place through the media. It's also the media that has kind of separated this relationship, or continues to separate the relationship between African Americans and Africans on the continent. So yeah.
So you're now in South Africa, 2 years now
hmm
that you've been in the country. First, how are you finding it? And secondly, what are you busy with in the country?
Oh, first of all, I love South Africa,
Mm-hmm.
and very specifically, I love Johannesburg.
Oh.
Johannesburg is Atlanta. It is Houston. So I work at Wits, and sometimes students will ask, "Hey, what is the U.S. like?" I'm like, right around Joburg,
Uh-huh.
and you've seen if you've seen Johannesburg, you've seen what a major American city looks like.
Okay.
And I mean all of the spectrum of a major American city. We have Soweto's too, right? We have Tembisas too,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what am I doing? So I work at the African Center for the Study of the United States at Wits,
Okay.
and I manage the Diaspora Project. And the goal of the project is to connect African American institutions, organizations, and individuals with the African continent.
Mm-hmm.
And we do that through two ways: research and publication, as well as cultural exchange. So this year in June, we brought 20 historically black college and university students, HBCU students, Howard students. Kamala went to Howard, right? So Howard students and Xavier University of Louisiana, Morgan State. So we brought 20 students here for a 2 week long program. They were instructed by professors, visited Constitutional Hill, Soweto, Nelson Mandela's house, apartheid museum. But they were social work students, so they also visited um, community organizations that are actually putting this kind of social work in practice. Next year, we have now partnered with Wits Business School and then Howard's Business School to bring in graduate business students to South Africa again for another 2 week program. And we're also working with the National Association of Black Journalists on a very similar program.
It sounds so great, and also sounds like there's a. It sounds like it intertwines with your book, the work that you do.
Absolutely.
It actually works hand in hand with
hmm
your book. What's the name of your book so that we are able to grab it for ourselves?
Find Home Again: My Journey from the United States to South Africa.
Find home again.
hmm
And now this is your home.
This is my
And
home.
we welcome you. So
Thank you so
glad.
much.
Thank you so much for your time. Send our love to your family as well. Hopefully
Absolutely.
one day we'll get to meet them as we talk about home and South Africa. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Asad El Malik, speaking to us about his journey relocating from America to South Africa. Of course, also lost his home in Hurricane Katrina. It is time for news.